Hey guys, it's Leah and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be discussing the film Glass that came out last night. If you guys don't know, it's Unbreakable, Split, and then Glass, which just came out. But I decided after I watched it that I would go ahead and do a review for you guys so you know what to expect or, what's in store for you when you go and see it. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe down below for more videos, and let's get started on reviewing Glass. So this film has the obvious strong cast, and it also has a strong background, Unbreakable and Split being two really great films. What this lacks, however, is tonality. This film is extremely tonally impaired, which is one of the biggest things that gets in the way of this film in general. The thing that didn't work for this film is the attempt to put Split and Unbreakable together into one cohesive world. That just did not work at all. Honestly, it just seemed like they were so crammed together, and the film wasn't really sure whether it was going to be about superhero abilities, or if it was going to be a thriller, or if it was going to take more of a superhero tone, and that showed throughout the entire film. Stating the obvious, this film was much weaker than Unbreakable and Split. It doesn't mean that this was a horrible movie. It just was not a standout and didn't do well as a wrap-up to a trilogy, essentially. It did not work trying to put these three characters into one universe together, into one film. It was almost as if they were all doing their own standalone films. Something that really made it feel like that was obviously the whole second act of the film, for the most part, took place in this asylum, where all of the main characters were split up. Mr. Glass didn't even talk for the majority of the film, which I understand the purpose, but then we also had this psychiatrist who was just on a loop, repeating the same things over and over and over, and it seems that this film was really hung up on the fact that they were trying to explain why these heroes were not heroes, why these people with these abilities did not have these abilities. And while that started off as an intriguing plot, it was overplayed, overused, and after hearing, I can't even remember her name, the psychiatrist's name. What was her name? I can't think of it. But after hearing her explain the same things over and over and over for the majority of the film, it got old. It got really old. As always, James McAvoy's performance is impeccable. It must take a lot to portray someone, and why I say portray is because the jury is still out on how mental illness is portrayed, especially in these films. Somebody with dissociative identity disorder and the way it's portrayed in this film is obviously completely different. In a lot of cases, I'm not saying 100%, everywhere it's completely different, but in a lot of ways, it is definitely portrayed differently, and that is still a little questionable as to where mental illness plays in the spotlight of this film, especially when you have somebody, the whole second act of this play, they're all separated, and then somebody's just explaining these things over and over and over. It just is a little bit walking the line, in my own opinion. Something else that didn't work for this film, as I already mentioned, is the cast was completely separated and cut off for each other for the majority of the film, leaving a second act that just seemed to crawl. Finally, it seemed as though they weren't sure how to put them together into one film, so we kind of separated them until the big build-up at the end. And finally, they all got together in this pink room. They sat down, and she explained to them again why they're delusional, essentially. And it seemed as though they didn't know what to do or what to say. They were all just sitting there, the most awkward thing ever, and just looking at each other. And that was the first introduction of them all being together in this seemingly cohesive world, or attempt at being a cohesive world. Something that really bothered me, that is definitely just a side note, is this film favors the close-up shots. And I don't know if it was just me, but it took away from being able to tell a story through different camera angles and shots when it was just a majority like bulk close-up shots the whole time. I felt so awkward. I don't know if that was just me. That's just something I wanted to throw in there because it's just sticking in my head of when I was just like, okay, like, awesome, we get it, that's your favorite. There, of course, are plenty of interesting sequences in this film. I don't want to say that this was completely boring. I mean, there was interesting sequences, but the thing is, most of them centered around McAvoy and his character. The majority of them. And when you have a film where you're trying to bring in, you know, two other characters as well, and the main film centers around basically Split 2, overall, what I didn't like about this film is it felt extremely unbalanced, and it put the majority of its weight on their twist at the end. If you think about it, the first 2/3 of the film are all just trudging along, waiting for the last 30 minutes or so. You know, in general, that just leaves kind of an unsatisfying feeling when you're waiting for 2/3 of a film that's re-explaining things that for the most part, most of the people in the theater already know, and you just spend time reiterating the same thing over and over. It tends to lead to a very unbalanced and unsatisfying film. For that reason, I feel like this film is very average. I don't think that it was good by any means, but obviously it wasn't complete garbage, to say the least. But I didn't really enjoy it as much, and I think it's extremely lacking and unbalanced. But that's it for my review. Make sure you guys leave comments down below what you thought about this film, if you've seen it or if you want to see it. That is going to be it for today's video, guys. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.